Lillian, thank you so much for talking with us today.
My pleasure.
I want to start out by just telling us how long you taught full-time there at FIU, and what are some of the things that you've done over the years as a faculty member there?
Well, I am considered one of the founders of the university. The university opened in 1972 to more than 5,000 students, the largest opening enrollment of any college and university in the United States in history. And I joined the university 9 months after it opened, so I am considered one of the founders since I joined the university within its first year. And we are celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. So it's really very exciting for me. Next year I will be at FIU for 50 years. Can't believe it, but so I've been through so many things that have brought about the evolution of journalism and media programs at the university. I taught the first courses in journalism. I was also the advisor and the originator, I guess you could say, of the student newspaper and the student yearbook. So, and my first job was director of student activities. I was hired because of my background in journalism and in teaching journalism and advising student media in other places. And so I have seen that evolution go through to where I went up the ladder too as a woman, and that's so important to be the first woman and one of the founders of the School of Journalism and Mass Communication, and became its dean, I served as its dean for nearly 9 years before stepping down, and now starting and being executive director of the Lillian Lodge Kopenhaver Center for the Advancement of Women in Communication at the university. That's kind of been my trajectory over the years. In addition to teaching, I was the associate dean of the school before that, but I'm one of the founders of the School of Journalism and Mass Communication as well. So it's really been my career, my life work. And throughout that work, I have wanted to work to promote young women and to help young women succeed in our business.
I am at times very uncomfortable because I feel like so many of the things that the CSW has been advocating for, men have not always been as supportive. And even in talking about feminism, the way I teach about it in my race, gender, and media class, the text I use is called The Guy's Guide to Feminism. We're trying to help the males to understand you have a place in this discussion, you have a place in the conversation. But what I heard you say is, in identifying potential contributors for your book, you had to pair women with the males. And I wanted you to speak a little bit about where you think men play a role in advancing the scholarship in this area.
I really, given my own personal background with, I'll give you another example. I did have 2 men do a chapter in the 2nd edition. And those 2 men decided to do a presentation at AEJMC without consulting with me, without telling me about it. I was on the panel, or I was on the presentation as a co-presenter. I knew nothing about it. So I went forward to the board and I got the whole thing canceled, that they could no longer present. So I've always had a bit of an attitude about superiority and inferiority. And this new edition, I have no males in it. And I will argue that we still need enough of those of us who have lived this life in this body. Now, again, I will argue that LGBTQ, there's a dimension of that too. And I certainly want to include color, and I certainly want to include, we've got authors from 16 different nationalities, and we've got 10 returning, but we've got the other 12 are newbies. I've got 6 people from 5 continents. I'm trying to get a great diversity, but I have left one part of the body out. And, maybe that's an argument that can be made, but at this point in time, I still don't feel we've achieved enough to be able to say that it's fair to not recognize the perspectives that are coming from females, women.
I want to move on to this project, which we talked
Okay.
about. I'm proud to have not only the book that you did, the first book on misogyny, but also the second book, the global misogyny book. Let's start off by talking about how you came to do a project on misogyny and media in the age of Trump.
Well, you know, the starting point there is that Trump, of course, was displaying himself as highly misogynistic. And, you know, his statements about grabbing women by the, you know what, and so on were impactful to me. And I didn't think they were very appropriate coming from an American president. And then the other thing is that, you know, on reflection, I mean, I started thinking about this when I was looking at the Brett Kavanaugh hearings on television and just realizing, you know, the world works in certain ways. And if you're one of the good old boys, or if you're a person of influence and power, you can get away with a lot of things. And women are rarely in that position, but even when they are, as I said, they don't always work on behalf of other women or help other women. And I decided, okay, this is worth investigating. And just reflecting back on my own professional career in newsrooms and in academia, you know, I had been put to the test in all sorts of ways. I often found, you know, in my early days, some of the men, as I said, who were my bosses were champions. Some of them were not. But I think in academia, it's, I don't know. I just think it's a very fluid situation, and its leadership positions are very difficult because no matter what leadership position you're in, you're wedged between, say, the faculty and the upper administration, or between, you know, maybe the deans and the chancellor or whatever. So it's very hard to bridge those divides and be, you know, you try to be fair, you try to treat everybody equally and so on, or with fairness, but, you know, perception is probably everything, and there are challenges.
In your introduction, you differentiate between sexism and misogyny. Can you talk about that? Because everybody hasn't had a chance to read the book.
Okay. Well, I think misogyny is sort of more individualized. Sexism is much more systematic, but misogyny is sort of the daily representation of, in a way, of sexism on an individual level. So, for example, you know, there are all sorts of misogynistic treatments. I mean, if somebody rolls her eyes at you in a meeting, if you're the dean and you've got some associate dean or a faculty member just rolling their eyes, sort of giving the impression that they're not on board with what you're saying, or undermining you in some way, you know, that's misogynistic treatment. If you belittle women, if, you know, you're being misogynistic. I mean, if you're a male in a certain position and you sort of regard the woman as the little woman, or make a disparaging remark, oh, why would you know something about that? You're just a woman. Or talk over a woman at a meeting or something, mansplaining, you know, those are all misogynistic treatments. And obviously the culmination of misogynistic treatment is femicide. But in between then there are sexual assaults and rapes and so on that are all symptomatic of misogyny.